With just 2 rounds left to go in 2024 Season 1, the iRacing IndyCar Open Series heads to the streets of Montreal. Today we show the diversity, the adaptability drivers are required to display, with today being the final road course rounds. Next week, it's 3 turns at Pocono for the drivers to try and master. Arjuna Kankipati on hand alongside Ewan O'Leary as we get set to go racing. And Ewan, this is a fun street circuit, yes, one that maybe the IndyCar is not too familiar with though. See the looks from up above, the tight confines of the track. One thing to keep in mind, today's race, one of those slightly longer ones, and so when we are expecting 2 pit stops to come into play, it comes to then figure out tyre strategy is going to be somewhat intriguing as well. Here's a look at, well, the schedule, where we've been, where we've still got left to go. The 3 corners of Pocono in a week's time, bound to be an exciting showdown to round things off. But what a showcase we've had across the world, in fact, in the final season before we can reline ourselves up, Ewan, with the NTT IndyCar Series, an opportunity to travel across the world. They're pretty sure it's just 3, at least at the track management. They painted it onto the walls of the track itself. Of course, a week ago we were talking about changes at the top where Kevin Burrell had led, but now Adam Blocker reasserts himself, of course. Drop weeks come into play across this 12-round championship. Only the best 8 rounds of the season are scored, and because we have 7 road courses, 5 ovals, you are required to at least bring some chops on both sides of the equation at one point or another. Not just close at the top where it's just 30 points, of course, but Ewan looking further back. Close battles through the rest of the championship as well.
The season where it was maybe a little bit spread out. It's not that case anymore, and it's all closing up nicely for the final rounds.
We'll get things sorted. You can now hear Ewan O'Leary. Apologies for the technical issues. But Ewan, did he say anything interesting in the last couple of minutes?
I mean, you can be the judge of that. You were the only one who heard.
Oh, well, we're getting ready to go racing. Qualifying just come to a close in what I think is probably going to be a relatively important qualifying session, because passing here, it's going to be about compromise in terms of setup, of course, and what drivers have been able to dial on in. Let's run you down, though, trackside to the starting grid to see how they'll line up for the final road course race of the season. Of course, going to be interesting over 2 pit stops to see how the strategies play out. It is going to be Phil Krause in the private label Team Hype Machine that will be on pole position with a 1:19.662, and Canada's own Brian Carey will roll alongside on the front row. Adam Blocker will then be inside of Kevin Burrell, the 2 championship contenders on row 2, with Zach Kubler and then Juha Reiner behind them on the 3rd row of the starting formation. Rashad Craig, Andrew Marquez 7th and 8th, and almost 1.5 seconds then off of pole. Really a flying lap by Phil Krause. Jack Mara and then Seb Alexander make up the rest of the top 10, with Sam Karasala, Maxime Kossa in 11th and 12th positions, and then rolling through the field, Jesper Orman, Nicholas Sudik 13th and 14th. Olivia Hayward on some unfamiliar equipment back in 15th with Matt Shimiko alongside Victor Aud and then Christian Hildegard. No qualifying time for a driver that we know can be very, very rapid. He won't be at the very back though. That will be Will Weiser that rolls 19th. And at the very tail end of the field. The drivers only have a, well, short formation lap to go, relatively little time for them to get ready, and being held now by the final drivers just making their way down to the grid. Ewan, some expectations as we get ready to get underway.
I think we're going to see some incidents, unfortunately, in terms of people hitting the wall. It might not even be car-on-car incidents at the moment. It could well be just getting things wrong on your own. It's a very close circuit in terms of pushing the boundaries around here. You've got to get very close to the walls to go fast. So when we get towards the end and people really start to push for the line, then it could get interesting there. And hopefully we get just as close of a finish as we saw on the last street course that we were at Belle Isle.
That was not a bad race by any means, was it? Final cars just making their way to the grid, and I can tell you, majority of the field that I see right now electing actually pretty much split 50-50 in terms of tyre compound choice as they begin to roll away. We'll show you those tyre options on the left-hand side. Zach Hubler seemingly not gridding up, and so he will not be taking to the starting formation, but a basically equal mix, primaries and alternates inside the top 10.
Yeah, it's very interesting indeed. It's Phil Krause who's probably going to step away immediately here and run away at the front of the field, but it's going to be very interesting in the midfield. How quickly can those guys who are sort of at the low part of the top 10 work their way forward, and how much is it going to hurt them being stuck in traffic early on here in this race?
Who do you think comes out on top, though? Of course, with Krause trying to break away, his pace car is off and away.
Yeah, Krause is going to be difficult to beat, isn't he? And he's going to certainly lead from the start.
Well, pace car's off and away. Phil Krause in control. He doesn't hang around, although he does let them fall back 2 by 2 through the rest of the field. Green flag racing on the streets of Montreal. Adam Blocker already passed his teammate Brian Carey for second spot. They were 4 wide in the background without a shadow of a doubt all the way at the tail end of the field. Nick Studick had to bail out of it to get out of the drama. Now through the first chicane they will go. It's the first to the right, then down to the left. Remember, we had drama between Ferrari and Mercedes all those years ago, but no one into the grass. Single file for the time being.
Yeah, glad that everyone's taking it rather calmly on this opening lap here at Montreal, because it's a place where things can go wrong very quickly. And in fact, the first side-by-side is outside the top 10. Christian Hildegard making his way past Jesper Roman by the looks of things for that 12th position. And thankfully, everyone sorted themselves single file as we expected. Phil Krause has already pulled a margin that is over 1 second.
Rashad Craig made a mistake, and now in front of him, Juho Reiner spears into the wall. Craig will have a slowdown from cutting that second chicane on the run into this hairpin. No shadow of a doubt there, but now as they work to the right, no chaos on the brakes. Side by side, Karasala slips it up the inside. Interesting to note that no driver has used a push to pass to open up this 46-lap affair.
It doesn't look like it. Kevin Burrell is going to be on the defensive here by the looks of things from Jack Mara, who's done the best of those on the red stripe tyres on this opening lap, and they're continuing to look to move forward. It'll be single file into the final chicane on this occasion, though, and as you say, no push to pass is used, I don't believe, anywhere in the front of the field, indeed the whole way through the field.
Now and again, just a reminder of those compounds on the left side of the screen. Marquez and Mara, the two that really now have got to work their way on forward. I can tell you the gap up front, 3 seconds. Phil Krause using those alternate tyres to good effect to try and run away. Seems as though Zachary Hubler, by the way, had a technical issue. He has reconnected to the session, but he's going to get out onto track 1 lap down. All 19 machines out on track with the exception of Reiner, who's down on pit lane.
That's a shame, really. Leaves us with only 17 in contention, and it looks like Victor Ogier has dropped back a bit further from the back of the field as well. So unfortunately a few incidents early on, but that's to be expected around this circuit. There's the latest of the passes. Maxime Cosson going a bit deep into turn 8 by the looks of things, and he will be on the defensive again for that position that he's just gained.
Karasala now going to have to watch as Seb Alexander, the rearview mirror, going to lurk menacingly and on the alternate tyres as well. Doesn't get a good drive off the corner, and so now as the push to passes begin to be used, Rashad Craig the first to get onto the bottom, to Alexander and Hildegard, who is up an incredible 7 spots and onto the back of this now 5-car tandem that heads off into the chicane. Now, hopefully no drivers into the wall of champions on driver's right-hand side. Watch as Hildegard just gets boxed up behind those that he's now trying to pass. Important note that Ewan, he started on the primary tyre, trying to take it a little bit long.
Yeah, and this will happen quite a lot or because of that. A lot of those drivers behind starting on red stripe tyres. There's going to be a lot of getting overtaken here, but the pain taken right now will be all worth it a little bit later on. At least he's hoping so, because there will be positions made up later. However, it's just this kind of conundrum, isn't it, really? Do you want to take the pain at the start of the race in traffic? Do you want to start on the red stripe tyres and be in traffic early on, or do you want to be in traffic later on? It's really a toss-up, and sometimes there's no right answer, really. It's just about a little bit of luck, getting the right strategy on the day as well, and making sure whenever you take that pain that you get through the traffic quickly.
So word, by the way, from pit lane out of the private label team hype from Phil Krause in particular is that the Reds aren't too bad. They actually start, of course, faster. We're seeing that now. He's 5 seconds clear of those behind. But then they fall to around the same level as the primary. So we could see some equal sort of equalization, I should say, on those tires. And with fuel window expected to be 18 to 19 laps, let's say that you are able to do 2 full 18-lap stints on the primaries, it leaves maybe a 10-lap run then on the alternates. There's a lot of flexibility you then have in that window.
Yeah, there is, but it's pretty complicated to work out at the moment. And I've got to say, if you're going to try and catch Phil Krause here, then you've already got a huge job on your hands. Look at the difference we've got at the start of the stint. You mentioned it flattening out at the end, but look at the difference right now for Krause versus Adam Blocker. Just over 5 seconds. Although we heard this, didn't we, after the race at Belle Isle a couple of weeks ago. We heard the race leader that day got out to a big advantage, and we spoke to those who were behind after the race, and they said, I didn't think we were going to catch them again. We didn't think we were going to see them again at all, and we ended up with 5 cars separated by about 2 seconds by the end of the race. So you do just never know, despite that quite deceptive early gap.
Let's see if we can go back in time to the start of the race. Haven't been ignoring the sequence, and that's Rashad Craig that goes wide initially by himself, and then Reiner just loses the rear end on power down. Maybe cold tires coming into play as well.
Yeah, maybe. Interested to see whether he was touched by the car behind. No, he wasn't. He just got on the power too early, and maybe cold tyres, as you say, but maybe a bit of over-ambition on the exit of turn 9, and a real shame as well, because part of the front wing got taken off there. And unfortunately, a race that started in a decent position for him has gone down the pan already, really.
So outside of that, though, can't start. Zachary Hubler has mentioned technical issues meant he missed the start. I think Victor Aoud intentionally decided to start from pit lane. He finds himself not that far off the back of, well, the tail end of the field. Nick Sudik's made a small mistake. Sam Carasalo's been passed by Christian Hildegard in the mid-pack, in the thick of the action. That's really where all this fighting is. Hildegard 15 seconds off of your race leader, but only about a second off of the 8th position, and that leading car in train, Maxime Cosson, and 2 drivers in front of Hildegard that are now on a different compound of tyre.
Yeah, not big gaps to it, sort of incrementally, other than that one to the lead, of course. So should be able to start to slowly work his way forward here, Hildegard. It's important for him to stay ahead of Carasala, and I think he will do for the next few moments. But he's got to remember that with every lap that comes on here, Seb Alexander is going to be getting slower, as Hildegard is getting slower at a less rate of Alexander. So he will start to level off, and he will start to close in. He's just got to wait for that moment when the tyres level off.
Still waiting for the equalising moment, as Nick Sudik shows actually something that we're going to have to talk about at some point. A, that it's very easy to make a mistake at that final chicane, but B, cars entering pit lane are going to want to carry a bit more speed because you can brake so much deeper than those returning and continuing on the racing surface. And so we're only a third of the way into the fuel run, but if you've got a car in front of you, you want to be thinking about when you come down to pit lane.
Yeah, you will. We speak about this all the time at Montreal. If there's a car in front of you, ideally you don't want to be going in and tearing in there, because you will rear end them. And ideally you want to have a clear entry to pit lane to allow you to just brake as late as possible and do it in one motion. If there's someone in front of you, you'll have to brake initially for as if you're going around the corner, and then you'll have to get on the power again briefly and then get on the brakes again for the pit entry line. So you've got to be really careful with that, and if you can, pit with no one in front of you. And I think if you've started on the red stripe tyres here, you will be able to do that, because you'll sort of be slowing up and backing into those guys on the primaries. Thinking of the, maybe not Andrew Marquez, because he's got Jack Mara right in front, but look at the gap Mara's got to Pirel. He's starting to open that gap to where he might be able to tear in at full speed.
Yeah, and I get the sense as well that when it comes to the different tyres, Phil Krause with a 122.1 last time by, he was still 8 tenths quicker than Blocker in second, so he hasn't reached that equalisation crossover point just yet, or he's just got a much quicker car than the rest of the field, which is a very scary proposition. Top and bottom, cars running down the Casino Straight in towards turns 12 and 13 with that wall on the outside that no one wants to run into. And you can also get a shot, just if you look at the top of your screen, the barrier actually kind of juts out as you come through the corner, and so you're incentivized in so many ways, Ewan, to run as wide as possible.
Yeah, it certainly are, and it's what makes this circuit quite so dangerous, what makes this circuit quite so brilliant, I've got to say, to drive around here. It's absolutely fantastic. We haven't quite seen the racing that this circuit can produce just yet, I've got to say, but we're going to get there, and hopefully it will be a good race overall when we get to the end of it. Still a long way to go, of course, but right now it's just about keeping the car clean, keeping all the panels straight, and making sure you don't clip into one of these walls and damage your suspension, because you can't recover from that kind of thing in a race of this length.
No, absolutely not, even with the slightly extra race distance that gets us to 2 pit stops. Blocker starting to break away from his teammate Carey, and that's putting Birrell under, I think, a little bit more pressure to clear the number 12 machine, close on his championship rival, just to make things a little bit simpler going into that final round. Rashad Craig on the button trying to close to these top 6 machines as well as we get closer to the halfway stage of stint number 1. Onto the brakes they go. You're wondering how you can join this. This is an official iRacing competition, open to anyone with, well, in the top split case, sufficient iRating to join the field, but we have multiple splits going on right now, so there's a second field with drivers racing in the same conditions effectively, and so you just have to have an iRacing account, the right iRacing license, and you could be part of the fun.
Absolutely. There's not a huge amount of sign-ups either, so if you get your iRating up a little bit, then you might find yourself on the broadcast too, but that will change a little bit next season, won't it? Because it will be the open wheel iRating to think about, so get your head around that before you try and enter this race. But yeah, it is available for anyone to get in, and even if you're not going to be on the broadcast, then get involved in one of the official races throughout the week, because it's a fantastic series to take part of, and I think at any time of the day pretty much you'll find a field to race with.
Yeah, no, especially when we go to places like the Nordschleife, where you find them without a shadow of a doubt, basically races all day long. You want fixed setup racing, there's that as well. You know, we've got broadcasts of the official series on multiple days through the week as well, so you can always find a decent field no matter what. And we've got the iRacing IndyCar series coming up, which will feature full-length races following the NTT IndyCar series. So that's not every week, that's only the weeks that the real series is racing as well, and that will be fun to be able to follow along as the campaigns get underway. Check in with your race leader, by the way, because he is slowly starting to feel the pain, I think, of the tires. Left side of the screen, you can see the lap chart. It started down in the low 21s, in fact almost down in the 29s, such the speed from Kraus in the early stages. Slowly but surely though, tires have gone to 22.5s.
Yeah, so the time's just going out now a little bit, but Adam Blocker's still slower from the looks of things at the moment. Still slower than what we've seen so far from Phil Kraus. He's a bit more consistent though, admittedly. In the 23s now, just tyres going off ever so slightly there, but that's it, what, 7/10 drop off maybe? Phil Kraus has seen, what's that, about 2 seconds? My maths is not very good, but it's something like that, and the primaries are starting to lose a little bit less. There's Brian Carey's times, a little bit slower again. He's been in the 23s for a few laps now, but it's not really equaling out. I think what we're seeing at the moment is the fact that Phil Kraus might well be onto an absolute stormer here with his car, and the way that he's got off to a rocket start to the race.
And so in some ways now you expect Kraus to probably come in before the full 18 laps is complete, his fuel is depleted, to switch over to the primaries potentially, although it is all going to depend on just how much the tires are going to keep underneath them. Check further back in queue, by the way, because it's not really building in intensity at the front just yet. You hope that it might in the closing ladder stages, but further back, still Carousel onto the back of Hildegard, with Orman, Weiser, Sudik, and Shimiko, the rest of your top 15 as they head down. Was that car into pit lane? It was. Jesper Orman becomes the first to do something different.
Yeah, so this is a little bit early, and you'd expect it to be, what is it going to be, 2 primaries maybe to the end? It's going to be some long fuel stints, I guess, from here until the finish, but I guess he can just about make it into the pit lane. He goes. He is already on the primaries, so I don't really know what he's doing.
Well, is he going to stay on the primaries? Is he switching to the alternates? Does he think that clean air is maybe important? He is going to switch to the alternates, so this is interesting, and now reverses instead of goes forward.
Well, he went forward initially and then reversed back again.
And he's pitting again, so that was 2 pit stops.
Did he forget to begin fueling or something?
Interesting. Well, that's a curious case of pit stop woes, and hopefully not Ferrari pit stop woes by any means, because that might sequence into the second pit stop cycle. Early to get a pit stop though, and of course we saw Juho Reiner pit for damage, but Jesper Orman becomes of course the first to do it on the strategy. Last time by, Kraus 1:22.7. What's it going to be this time for him at the line? Remember, best lap 1:21.0. I mean, he's consistent. He's still doing 22.5s.
Yeah, and that is still quicker than what we're seeing from Adam Blocker. And to be fair, he actually went quicker than his lap before that. So it's not a sort of linear loss of time on the alternates at the moment. He is still gaining in some ways. Adam Blocker into the 22s again, bit better of a lap time from him on that occasion. But as I said last lap, I think this is an indication of Phil Kraus being very quick right now.
And look at the field streaking down in towards pit lane. So Marquez going to lead them in, and then behind Weiser, Sudik, Shimiko, and I think that's it for the time being, all bar one of those drivers on alternates. Will they leave on alternates? Marquez is onto the primaries, and seemingly the rest seemingly wanting to change as well. Now out of pit lane, feeding out directly alongside Olivia Hayward, who's going to stay driver's right-hand side and allow the New York native Marquez to roll on forward to 12th. And well, next in queue is going to be Victor Howard, of course, who started down on pit lane.
Yeah, so should be easy pickings for Marquez from here on in, but these are the important laps, not only in terms of outlap and all that kind of thing, but in terms of making your way through the traffic. You don't want to be caught up behind someone on older tyres, just caught up with someone you're not racing, because they don't have an obligation to get out of the way. They can stay there, they can race you if they wish to, and that's the worst nightmare. If you're an early pitting car, you've got to try and find some clean air somehow, and I guess that's the biggest obstacle that Phil Kraus is really going to have in this race.
Onto the brakes once more. Now Kevin Burrell got a little bit loose, it seemed, through that corner, at least lost a bit of momentum to head back towards the line. You look at that track map where drivers are filtering out in traffic, by the way. It is seeming like we're going to see traffic at some point through the course of this race. So keep that in mind as Hildegard down to pit lane. He's got some damage on the front, and they have added some highlights, by the way, to make it slightly easier to pick that car out. But my eyes more drawn to the damage that's now getting fixed.
Yeah, it is a little bit scuffed up. I don't really remember any problems, but there we go. Dropped down from the jacks now, and away he goes after 13.4 seconds in the box. That is noticeably longer than those around him, which I guess sort of underlines what we were just saying. We'll see where he gets out. It's going to be pretty close with quite a few drivers, actually. Quite an abnormal pit exit here, I think it's fair to say, and he'll just sneak out ahead of Nicholas Sudik.
So 13.4 seconds. I wonder if that was front wing being changed as well for the flying Hildegard. We know just how quick he can truly be. What will he do at the front? Kraus last time by 22.7 once again. Now Blocker did a 22.8, so it seems as though we're reaching that equalization point between the drivers. Once again, consistent from Kraus and the private label team Hype Machine, but we are now officially 12 laps complete in this race. Blocker not faster still than Kraus up front.
And so Kraus can continue to leave it out front, but this is sort of good research, if you like. Well, I know they will have practiced, but it's good actual research testing here for Adam Blocker. How far can I take these alternate tyres in the middle or at the end of this race? He's getting an exact case study right now with Phil Kraus. 13 laps in, or 12 laps in, excuse me. This is the 13th lap. He's still not quite quicker, but we're getting to that point where they'll almost be the same pace.
So here goes Jack Mara off and away already. Andrew Marquez has blitzed his way on forward, and you get really spat out directly into the right-hander of turn 2, and so Jack Mara going to be clear, fortunately for him, but has lost some ground to Marquez in that sequence. Undercut working a treat for the number 10 Madworks machine. Still waiting for someone else to blink, someone up front to do something different, even though almost half the cars have already made their first trip down to pit lane. Does Kraus stay left this time by? No, he's on the brakes and staying out there once more.
He is. 9.4 seconds. I think this is going to be the first loss, isn't it? This time around. Let's see what the lap time is for Phil Kraus. Going to be in the high 22s, maybe a 23 if it's not gone quite so well for him. It's high 22. Is Blocker going at the same speed? Then he'll be quicker. Yes, he is. So the lap time's effectively reversed with that one. So the last two laps cancel each other out, but the only problem now is that Kraus has effectively got a 9.5 second head start.
It's the first time that The lap times will start to see a deficit, but as we go side by side into the hairpin, it's Shimiko up the inside of Jesper Orman, who gets onto the button as they now exit their way onto this long straightaway, blast his way clear before they even jink towards the right, and there's a clear indication of probably a little bit of downforce being stripped off the car in some ways, but also the power of the push to pass into the braking zone. No pass being attempted there, and Jesper Orman up to 17th spot. This is a real brawl down the back of the field.
It really is a very exciting battle as well to be for 15th position. This is the kind of thing we want to see. This is the kind of thing that Montreal can produce. These kind of battles and this kind of group here, battling for what is now 15th place in the field. It's exactly what Montreal is for. Plenty of straights around here, which means you've got plenty of opportunity to use your push to pass, and plenty of opportunity to slipstream as well, and normally after a long straight around here, and in fact in all occasions around here, there's a big braking zone afterwards, which really does help you.
Well, I've heard that there's been a big one at Daytona, which is not a surprise. So if you're joining us because they're not racing too much there, thanks for coming over. There's a lot of great racing happening here as well. Last time we're on the street circuits, let's not forget, in this iRacing IndyCar Open Series. When we say open, that means open setup, but it is open to anybody to participate in. Just need the required licenses on iRacing to jump in. Basically every couple of hours there's a race slot available. Hopefully you can find some drivers to go racing with you, although Phil Krause hasn't been able to do that so far today.
No, not just for the moment. And by the way, if you have just come over from Daytona, this race is probably going to be finished by the time they start again, so you might as well stay with us now, to be honest.
Is it really? Oh, goodness.
Based on the crash that I've just seen, yes. So.
I'm still watching the replays, to be fair, so I haven't quite seen everything that's happened. All we do know is, haven't seen any big crashes here. All 19 machines that started still out there and rolling as we get towards the end of a pit stop cycle. Now, this is also a slightly longer race. If you're just joining us, we mentioned it a couple of times. A lot of these races around one pit stop, 45 minutes or so in length. This race, and we've already been going for about 15 laps or so. We've still got around 40 minutes. 2 pit stops expected over the course of this one.
Yeah, and those pit stops have got to come pretty soon now. We're only waiting for the top 8 to come in, and then Olivia Hayward as well, who's being overtaken by some drivers who have already pitted. Now side by side again, Juho Reina looking to gain some of the places that he lost at this very location one lap, or many laps ago in fact. He's now ahead of Nicholas Sudik, with Jesper Orman looking for a way through as well. There's some top quality drivers in a lowly position compared to where you might expect to see them. Orman down the inside, but won't have a very good exit. Oh, maybe he will. It'll be pretty level with Nicholas Sudik off the exit.
He's being aggressive with the push to passes. You get 10 usages of the button. He's down to 6 remaining, not even halfway through this race. Down towards the braking zone of the chicane they go. Not a real passing opportunity in a lot of situations, just because you carry a lot of entry speed in, but you notice how tentative in many ways these cars are and drivers are being. That's because the curbs on either side of that corner rather treacherous, to say the very least. Now we're at that crossover point. Last lap, Phil Krause 1:23.025. The gain from Adam Blocker though, only 0.2 of a second.
Yeah, so the primaries are wearing at a similar length, and the only reason Krause is really extending this at the moment is I guess it gives him more flexibility later on, doesn't it? If we're expecting 20 laps to be at a maximum in terms of fuel, then it gives you that sort of wiggle room to play with. Oh dear, that's a scrape on the wall. It's fine. It gives you that sort of wiggle room. The longer that Krause leaves this at the moment, the better it is for his rates later on. And to be fair, he might consider 2 alternates to start this race. The tyres really aren't that bad compared to the primaries, so maybe you consider going on a second set of them.
No, absolutely, and that's the thing. And maybe the setup in terms of the race for those behind that started on the primaries is they'll go on to the alternates for the next 2 stints and be able to push just a little bit harder potentially. Something that, maybe we have seen the likes of Blocker do in the past. Now, you'll see him running very close to the wall. One thing that I'll just call out, Blocker are one of a handful of drivers that races in virtual reality, which in situations like this, when you're trying to get as close and, let's be honest, as personal with the walls as you can possibly be, it's a pretty useful situation.
Yeah, absolutely. To be fair, having never driven in VR, I've never quite experienced the level to which that would help you around a circuit like this when you are trying to get close to the wall, because feels to me as if you'd still be pretty, you're still pretty unsighted in one of these cars, for example, based on where you're sat and all the aero screen and all that kind of stuff around you these days. Here's the oh, it's a bit higher than I thought.
That's
actually.
a bit
Maybe
higher up, to be honest, than you actually sit in the car.
Okay, I thought so. So even a little bit lower than this, though, to be fair, this gives you a good perspective. It can help you quite clearly, but I guess it's one of those things that you need to see it to believe it, really. And clearly Adam Blocker believes that is the best way to go. And especially in a race distance like this, it's not sort of overly draining for you to use VR. I would not advise it, particularly for an endurance race.
Yeah, but Blocker does it for endurance races, you know. Many do. It's a sweaty endeavour, though, I assume, as we work on to what should be, in many ways, probably the final lap of the stint for Kraus, who has used 0 of the 10 push-to-passes that he has allotted to him through the course of this race. He's keeping them in his back pocket, saving them for a situation in which he may need them. And I want to give a quick shout-out as well to Brian Carey, who is still losing time to his teammate Adam Blocker, but has given himself a little bit of separation to the chasing Kevin Burrell.
Does Blocker not get tremendously seasick during endurance races, by the way? That seems crazy, but anyway, clearly not. He's clearly fine with it. Yeah, it's getting to that stage now where we really are expecting stops.
Here it comes.
Phil Kraus, finally comes in. 18 laps complete then, but I mean, I'm not convinced Adam Blocker will be able to go that much further, really.
Question will be, does Blocker come in? No, Blocker stayed out. You could see no driver following in behind the bright pink machine of Phil Kraus. So Blocker's going to go the 1 lap longer. Carey comes in, Burrell stays out, so there's also a split between them in the fight for 3rd position.
Yeah, and Carey probably doing a good job there, and actually doing Burrell a bit of a favour. Because he's come in, he's had the clear entry, and that means that Burrell will be able to as well. There goes Kraus on the exit finally now. After just under 10 seconds, I think that was, 9.1 it was, and he comes out right behind Rasha Craig. This is exactly the thing that Phil Kraus needed to avoid.
He's going to now have to be patient, sit behind. He had, let's not forget, what was close to a 9-second advantage at the time of pit stops. Fresh tyres. Craig goes defensive and blocks Kraus into the wall. Contact without a shadow of a doubt. iRacing gods, I think, have smiled on Phil Kraus, whose private label Teamite machine still looks unscathed.
Well, is it unscathed internally, though? I'm slightly concerned about the state of the suspension on that front of that car. Is it driving straight? Is it still driving the same that it was before for Phil Kraus? Because if not, it's a huge moment in this race. He does look like he's okay. He gave the steering a little bit of a wiggle out of turn 7, but what a big moment that could be in this race.
So as we ride on board with Kraus, his heart rate will have gone up without a shadow of doubt. Oh, someone is slow. Someone's out of fuel. Maxime Cosson has flown too close to the sun, and as Adam Blocker comes into pit lane, 1 lap too long for the 7 on the flatbed, right back to pit lane.
Sorry, how has he done that? It wasn't even close, really. He's down at the very furthest point on the racetrack, away from pit lane, and running out of fuel. I'm not sure how that's really possible, but there we are.
Blocker on the alternates.
And a shorter stop as well, it's worth noting.
So he's going to do a shorter stint here. Final stint maybe a little bit longer on fuel, but still unsure as to whether he'll go primary or alternate tyres. Kraus, as you might suspect, has switched on over to the primary tyre there. You know, slightly harder, will hypothetically grip a little bit longer, but will not grip as much at the start already. The gap down, Ewan, to 6 seconds on pit exit.
Yeah, it's a smaller gap, partly because of the shorter pit stop, which has gained Blocker 1 second. I guess the contact for Kraus has gained him maybe another 2 or 3, and then you've got the actual speed of the red stripe tyres, which will be coming into their own right now. They'll be getting up to temperature, and you can already see the gap coming down. You start to see what Phil Kraus is able to do in terms of lap times, because Blocker was he was in the mid-22s to start with, wasn't he, really, and then got into the 23s later on. Well, they didn't slow up that much, but the time gap's really going to come down here. Maybe we really do have a race on between these two.
Trying to... Oh, that wing is damaged. No questions about it. You can see it on the left front. I'll break out my yellow pen tool. Makes me immensely happy to do so. I'll write on...
washed out today.
Yeah, but, you know, we set it up quickly on the fly. Damage, fine. Professional broadcast here on RaceSpotTV.
There you go. That's the cutting-edge analysis you've all come for, and you've absolutely got it with what looks like one of those whiteboard pens that's slightly running out of oomph.
I don't know why. Don't know why it's looking like that. We don't need to focus on it. My pen's fine, Ewan.
I've only mentioned it twice, it's fine.
Let's go and look at the replay. Let's figure out what happened in the sequence, because I mentioned it live. I think Rashad Craig fades over driver's right, trying to open up the corner. There's contact. I think Kraus has got a bit of a right to feel a little bit aggrieved.
Yeah, I think so. And to be fair, I think Rashad Craig thinks he's left just enough room, but he just about hasn't. That is so close to being just fine, actually, in terms of leaving space there. He was, I guess, half not expecting Kraus to go to the outside and try and actually go round him there, and half thinking, well, I've left enough room there, it's fine. But you can just see it's a game of inches, and that was just millimetres, in fact, away from being absolutely fine. He was millimetres away from giving enough space there.
There's been some dramas, by the way, for Olivia Hayward. I mentioned at the start unfamiliar equipment, especially in terms of the brakes, and so makes a bit of a mistake. Same place that we saw issues on lap number 1, let's not forget, but unfortunately there was a second bit of drama, and it's going to be into the same sequence as well at the end of the short run that leads you in towards turn number 8, locks up, and fortunately keeps the Prismatic Motorsport car out of the wall.
Yeah, I did say that he wasn't feeling particularly comfortable anyway around this circuit here before tonight's race, so unfortunate couple of spins there. These two now separated by just less than 4 seconds. This is good pace from Adam Blocker in the mid 21s. Phil Kraus in the mid 22s. Nothing wrong with that, but there's not a lot you can do about the gap coming down just for now. He's got to remember that.
What you can say, though, is Kraus had the fastest lap of the race in stint 1. So, there's a bit of bragging rights in some regards. And, quite rightly, I think we'll make the case that he's struggling with damage from that front wing. And we saw from Christian Hildegard, let's not forget, a front wing change costs you about 5 seconds in terms of pit stop time. So Blocker's already, technically, if you want to consider it that way, got the lead of this race. Just we have to get to that second pit stop cycle. Give us another, 15 laps or so.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see what compound tyres they're going to put on here as well, because I'm not convinced there's an obvious choice, personally. Are you going to... Or do you believe that the red stripe tyres will hold out and stay together well enough towards the end to really fight for a win? Or do you think that the primaries may be the better way to go for this race? I'm really not sure, actually, in terms of which one is the right call here, because in the end there was that flattening off period, but it wasn't like the Reds fell off a cliff entirely. It was a little bit more sort of nuanced than that, and they actually got to a pretty similar pace for quite a while.
I think if you're Kraus, you go alternates. If you're Blocker, you're probably going to go... We'll have to see how the fall-off goes for him, but if the setup doesn't hold up as well as Kraus, choice might be obvious. Fight, by the way, between two cars on different tyre strategies and different fuel mileage as well. Marquez has been on track now for 12 laps. He was amongst the first to come down towards the pit lane. Rashad Craig has just finished up his stop. He's on the alternates, a fresh set of alternates as well as compared to the worn primaries of the Madworks 10 in front.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether his 10-second pit stop there for Rashad Craig suggests that there was slight rear-end damage for him, but I guess it might make sense based on what we've seen for the front of Phil Kraus's car, but that's behind him now, and he's into the top 5 and should be able to work his way past Andrew Marquez pretty quickly here. Regardless of the tyre compounds, even if they were on the same compound, he'd have quite an advantage because he's a lot younger on the tyres. Needs a push to pass to go through, and maybe it's a waste of one, but it looks like he does need it. He hasn't quite got the legs on the straight.
Wants to get by, though, quickly and efficiently behind. Hildegard slides in front of Mara, who's struggling a little bit in some ways, but is also on the alternates, rather on the primaries. Hildegard on the alternates, so seeing again, drivers switching back and forth and crossing over. So as we now head in towards what is the second half of this race, a 46-lap affair, we are officially 23 laps complete. Gap at the front down to 2.3 seconds. Yes, Kraus dealing with some damage to that front wing. We check out the lap counter, shall we, for Adam Blocker out front. It'll be interesting to get a sense for how his fall-off is going. 21.5 initially, 21.7, and now already into the 22.3s.
Yeah, was it a bad lap, or are the tyres already going away from him? because if so, then it's not good news at all for his race. There's no doubt about that. So let's see where he's going to get to on this latest lap. The gap now has just got to around 2 seconds, and to be honest, I think if he's going to win this race, he needs to get ahead of Kraus before the real drop-off point. He needs to at the very least get to level with him, but since I think he's going to be pitting in first, he needs to be ahead because he needs that clear run into pit lane. If he's trailing Kraus by half a second or so, he's not going to get that clear run in that he needs.
On board with some of these drivers, you get the sense that the balance of the car quite comfortable, which is interesting because, you know, street circuit, this is a bumpy circuit in many ways, but the drivers definitely look as though they've got a definite degree of comfort built into the setups. The real struggle seems to be coming more from the tires than anything else, which sometimes you might say, well, is it down to weather conditions? Let's take a look. It's not particularly warm as Kraus bounces over one of those sausage curves. That cost him a couple of tenths of a second. The wind's pretty strong, though pretty gusty, all things considered. Yeah,
I love your use of proper measurements there with kilometres an hour in Celsius. That's fantastic.
What fake units would we be using here? I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, exactly. These are the only units that exist. Yeah, not terrible at all, and it will be keeping the tyres in a relatively nice window. And it's not completely chewing through the red stripe tyres in a sort of abnormal way, which is a good thing as well. So they're staying in the window rather nicely. Here's a close moment with the wall, but just an example of how close you've got to get round it.
I'm more just curious about how, just look at how much curve Kraus used there, and then watch the steering balance it out on exit. Does get a bit sideways, and now Blocker down within a second and a half. That gap just continuing to close. Relentless is the charge from the Powerslide Motorsports machine. Of course, it would be fun to see maybe what it could have been without the damage, but Blocker's going to get through. And so let's now talk about championship situation. Kevin Burrell finds himself, what, 12 seconds effectively off of Adam Blocker on a very similar sort of a strategy. In terms of points heading into the final round, it seems as though Blocker will have the upper hand going to Pocono.
He will, and Burrell has got to give all the support he can to Phil Kraus to try and hold off Adam Blocker, because I don't think there's a lot that Burrell can do from back there, but there's certainly a lot that Kraus can do to get involved in the championship. He's not going to win himself, but he could stop Blocker from winning this race, and that would help Burrell massively. Burrell's actually on his own island completely, isn't he? It's about 12 seconds behind the two in front and 12 seconds ahead of the battle for fourth place.
I like what you said there. Island of his own.
Literally on this. Well, I could have said Kraus should block Blocker for the win, but I didn't.
Oh, you could have. Let's not forget, by the way, I did say earlier that, you know, IndyCar hasn't really raced here. You go back in the day, Champ Car did race, what, 2002 to 2006 here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. You can even go back to, you know, slightly alternate tracks, you know, what was Sonair, the Oval, 1984 to 1986. So it's not like it's unfamiliar. It's just, can we suggest that maybe we bring the Indy cars north of the border and do this in the real world? Because, you know, I'm very happy that we're adding more ovals to the schedule. Don't get me wrong, in the real world, it's always good to be turning left. But some new street circuits might be fun as well for the drivers to experiment with.
Well, yeah, new street circuits or new road courses outside of the US, I would say. I got to say, I do miss the days slightly of IndyCar going, not quite around the world. Don't want to make it a world championship, that'd be weird. But, you know, go to some flyaway races at different venues in different countries around the world, maybe in Europe, in Asia and elsewhere. It would be fun to see, I reckon. But unfortunately, I don't think it's quite on the horizon anytime soon. Hopefully in the not near future, but whatever you call after that, the long future.
Medium term, long term.
Yes.
Of course, you know, there was excitement, there was potential about the chance of going to Argentina. That seems as though things have slightly changed in terms of the situation and the possibilities of that happening. But, you know, maybe Mexico, celebrate Pato Award, that could be an option. Here comes Blocker, though. Gap now within 0.2 of a second at the line as we complete lap 27. Up 27 a minute still expected left in this race. Kraus has got the 5-second looming over him in terms of the time it will take to repair that left front section of the wing, to get that wing off, to replace it with a brand new nose cone. Blocker behind on a slightly different compound of tire. Ewan, if you were the strategist right now, you're deciding which compound of tire each of these drivers is going on to in the final stage. What are you thinking?
I think it's got to be the red stripe tyres, hasn't it? Kraus went quite a long way in that first stint and never really lost too much to the primaries. You know, the primaries, to put it more simply, they never quite gained the time back that they lost earlier on. So while Blocker did gain about a second of those, that time that he lost, he'd lost 10 seconds to the red stripe tyres, which meant that, you know, that's a deficit overall. And given that we've already only got 18 laps to go, they can more than make it to the end without, you know, comfortably really on the red stripe tyres. I wouldn't even be surprised if Kraus comes in pretty soon here to try and make an early last stop and get those red stripe tyres on.
Given that Jesper Orman has come and put the alternates on, I think that's a wise call, but Kraus will stay out there for at least one more lap. What he could do right now is just slow Blocker's momentum, slow his charge just that little bit, and knock his rhythm slightly out of line into turn one. Look how close to the grass they get on driver's right-hand side. Keep it onto the curb, just rotate the car as they wiggle out of turn two, back towards one of the chicanes where it plunges down the hill. This is where Kraus is really going to feel the pain as well. The car just slides towards the wall, but he's holding on, he's holding steady, and absorbing this pressure behind as we close on some lap traffic.
And that's going to be a story of the final third of this race as well. Lots of lap traffic around. Olivia Hayward's going to be first. Not too far in front is Jesper Orman. Then there's Victor Ode, though I suppose Orman has made a pit stop. Victor Ode is not too far away. Max Simcoe as well. There's a lot of cars not that far away up the front of the field, and I reckon they could well get there towards the end of this one, maybe to a few of those cars. Is that going to be race defining here as Blocker goes to the inside?
Big move at the hairpin. Now Kraus gives him the space, probably won't fight too hard. Neither of the drivers has used a push to pass really just yet. Finally Blocker relents and gets onto the button, and 70 horsepower shoots him down into the race lead. Kraus is in the draft, and now he cannot risk going to pit lane this time by unless he gets the driver's left. And that's what he will do. Amazing heads-up driving from Kraus, who follows Hayward into the pit lane.
And did he get slowed up slightly there by Hayward? I don't think so, but he was certainly more aggressive. And if he got that slowed up in time, then that was fantastic driving from Kraus, because not only did he get that clear on in, look at this, he managed to just stop the momentum of Blocker. Here he goes straight in. My goodness, he flew into that pit lane entry, and he just compromised the line of Blocker on the way into the final chicane as well. That was perfect.
I mean, that is what racecraft is all about, and we were saying, right, that he had the chance. This is where as well he's paying the price. Total pit stop time, 13.5 seconds. So as expected, 5 seconds of pain around the outside of Rashad Craig. Cold tires to play a part as well, but Kraus on the alternate, which will fire up slightly quicker as well, out on track with 17 laps to go.
He had to do that as well. Kraus had to do that. He was never going to get ahead, or he was never going to get ahead of Blocker again if he found himself stuck behind Rashad Craig. So now what does Adam Blocker do? I guess he's got to be in at the end of this lap, and he should probably be in the lead. You can't imagine he will take 13.5 seconds in the lane.
No, and he will have the benefit, let's not forget, in some ways, of being able to dictate how much pain he will pay on the tires. Does he come in this lap? No. Again, remember, because the fall off on the alternate tires isn't so bad, go longer, give yourself a little bit more fresh life at the start, potentially, of your next stint. Really to work, and a 5-second buffer as well with which now to play. Blocker has plenty of clear air behind to think about. Drivers have made their final trips down pit lane, though, not just at the front of the field in their fights, but further back behind. Marquez to the right-hand side now of the track as they head off to the hairpin. Hildegard going to go deep under the brakes and get his way forward to 8th spot.
Yep, so nice move there, but not one that was particularly argued about there from Andrew Marquez. He's continuing on those primary tyres now. Interesting call, he's just come out the pit lane on those primaries now, so maybe he hasn't used them yet, I suppose. That's the only reason I can think of him on them again now.
So how many drivers still are yet to pit? I think we're talking about 7 or so. That's Hildegard into the lane, and I think maybe just realizing that his strategy has come awry. We'll try and figure out what happened to him. Blocker's still out there though as he comes out of the hairpin. It'll be 15 to go this time by. He did a 1:22.8 on the board in terms of times. I think you have to respond. You can't allow Phil Kraus to close those 5 seconds, even if his tires will go off before. You need to have track position. He doesn't come in, though.
Well, he's probably lost a second a lap so far, so this is going to be at least 3 seconds that he's lost now from Adam Blocker, and this is interesting. Maybe he wants that tyre life at the end of the race, but goodness me, this needs to be a much shorter pit stop. And to be fair to him, with every lap that he runs here, the shorter this pit stop gets, it might well even be below 8 seconds in the box for the final time. We'll wait and see, but every single litre that he can save and not put into that car will help him down the line and will get him ahead of Kraus, and I believe he still will get there, but he's got to be worried about the pace of Phil Kraus, who comes over the line right now after his first lap. A 21.3, he is flying, a second and a half quicker in fact.
Now, let's not forget, though, this is not Formula One. We're not doing tyre changes in 2 seconds, and so there is a point at which you're not gaining anything by putting less fuel into the car, because you're having to sit there stationary and wait for the tires to be put on. So, I mean, I'm feeling tense right now. I genuinely am feeling the energy that these drivers must be concerned with. By the way, Brian Carey, I'm not sure what happened to him, but I think he sped in pit lane, and that's why he has dropped down to 7th spot. Real shame for him after qualifying on the outside of the front row.
Yeah, 48 seconds in the box there, that will do it. And unfortunately, that's seen him down in 7th position. Has he got to stop remaining? I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. He has. So he's the last of those cars in the top 7 who needs to stop. Everyone above him, apart from Kraus, needs to stop. Juha Reiner obviously needs to stop again, and Victor Ode as well. So we are still waiting for quite a few drivers to come in yet. And Adam Blocker continues on. Maybe he does have confidence he can overtake Kraus on the road, but I mean, I would have been in by now. That's certainly certain from my point of view.
So one other thing maybe to think about, what was it, you get 3 or 4 good laps at the start before you tail off to basically that 22.5 region where Kraus was so comfortable at the start of this race. If you find, that Blocker's only going to have 3 laps where he loses, let's say, a second at most, that's 3 seconds of the 5 that have been chopped away. Maybe that's why he feels a little bit more like he wants to stay out there for a little bit longer. We're basically just trying to talk ourselves into Adam Blocker coming down to pit lane. That's really what's happening, Ewan.
I don't really... I've not talked myself around yet, though, I've got to be honest. I'm still not quite so sure. 13 laps to go now, and admittedly, he hasn't got everything he can out of these red stripe tyres at the moment. Probably not, but he's got to be in. He's got to think about track position here. It's not the easiest circuit trying to take on in the world, and now he is in with 13 to go. So he's effectively split the final 2/3 of this race in half.
And because Brian Carey had come in basically just a moment ago, you got the sense it was probably going to be that way. 2 Powerslide Motorsports teammates on very, very similar strategies, even if the race is not going the same way. So as we wait for Blocker to sit stationary, get up on the jacks and get the tires and fuel added to the car, Kraus comes out of the final corner, avoids the wall of champions by a mere couple of inches, and as we wait to see what the word is on pit lane, it's alternates going on to the car for Blocker. Now Kraus is going to have to get to the right-hand side of the track and hold on to the position. He'll hold the lead by only a small margin. 5 seconds time penalty on pit lane. No drama for the private label team hype.
Well, Adam Blocker, you better be good at overtaking, because that was not great pit strategy. If this turns out well in the end, then it will be all okay with the tyres in slightly better condition and his sort of ability to overtake Kraus, which he's already shown once, but that was when Kraus was on the primary tyres. How easy is it going to be for him here in a few moments' time when they're on the same tyres and they're fighting for a race win? I'm not sure I like the call of coming out in second place.
And maybe he comes in 1 lap earlier, right? He's out in front. That's the margin that we're talking about. He will have to get it done now, though, on track. You see on the left side of the screen, the push to pass counts. We still have plenty as Blocker deep into the hairpin, almost ran into the back of the private label team hype car, but we stay okay. Although front wing dragging. Does Blocker have damage?
Does he have damage? Oh, it's gone. The front
oh,
wing's gone.
Heavens. Will he have to dive down to pit lane? He'll stay out there, but the front wing, right side missing now, and you can see the plane through the chicane.
And he is already struggling through the chicane. Is that the moment that Phil Kraus wins this race? He's grabbed 5th gear on the way into turn number 1. Just have a look at the pushing at the front end. It doesn't look terrible actually, but I guess it's low speed corners around here at Montreal, but even the lower speed ones are fairly quick in these IndyCars, so he is going to struggle with that front end just pushing on and on.
And I mean, there's no ifs or buts about it. Based on what I saw, mistake from Blocker, who was just a bit too optimistic, a bit too maybe aggressive on the tyres that he had. Here's the onboard look from the replay machine, and just see here, Kraus is a little bit wide, and Blocker just runs over him.
Yeah, that was silly, really. I thought he was actually scraping the wall out of turn 8, or 9, excuse me, but no, he just clumsily clips the back of Kraus, and unless he's damaged his rival's rear end there, then he's effectively self-sabotaged his own race there.
Well, Kraus has got a magnet on his car, clearly. Now, what I'm wondering is this damage potentially only on our side? Because the fact that Adam Block has been able to keep up this well, I can't believe that he's actually missing that much of the front wing.
Do you think so? I mean, he's certainly dropped back, as they are about to assume the race lead now. I believe Kevin Burrell's in, so they are going to assume first and second. I mean, he's dropped back, but is the dirty error following another car that bad? The understeer seems quite bad.
Understeer seems bad, but I'm still surprised that he's not dropped a full second off the pace. He did a 22.7 last time, which definitely not up to speed, but could also just be, you're running the time of the car in front of you. So, as we run our way to the end of this run, maybe with a little less spice on track, the spice might end up being down in the virtual paddock at the conclusion of this one. These two teams, the private label Team Hype and Powerslide Motorsports, tangled this past weekend. They tangled again, albeit this time with slightly different drivers. Go back to some other fights then. Jack Mara versus Andrew Marquez. Marquez just lost 7th spot.
Yep, so Mara up a place now. And this is a pretty straight fight between these two towards the end. The only problem being Andrew Marquez is on the primary tyres, and so he's going to be slipping back again and again. Seb Alexander will be on his case pretty soon as well, just under 3 seconds behind.
See, push to pass from Blocker being used in the attempt to keep up. I think that confirms that the damage is real. And he's just going to be trying to hold on to second. Now damage limitation for Blocker, right? You can't afford to lose track of the draft. You need to stay well in front of Kevin Burrell. Yes, there is a 16-second gap. I'm not expecting second and third to swap around, but that's the target. That's what you've got to keep in mind.
Yeah, it is. It's too big of a gap to cross, really, as you say. But Burrell has got a hope. And he's got to be wary of those behind as well, although Sam Carasala still has a pit stop to make, so the effect of that diminished. Maybe Blocker hasn't got so much damage as we were expecting there. He's only half a second behind, and that lap was a 22.3. That was back on the pace.
You say pace, I say push to pass pace. Because that was
true.
It was only the second time that we've actually seen it. I mean, let me break out the yellow pen again, just because I can. And it's proper this time. Look, wing. No. Wing. Top tier analysis, right?
Yes, and expertly pointed out as well.
How do you draw a thumbs up, Ewan?
Oh, I don't know. This could go very badly wrong. Oh dear. Oh.
No, it's not good, is it?
That's not good. If your thumb looks like that, then go to the doctors.
Right now? Okay, we'll have to stop the broadcast.
just leave it running on these two. I'll watch, it's fine.
Just have someone turn it off anyway. Well, okay, one thing to keep in mind. Now, iRacing has officially announced, a couple of weeks' time, rain is joining the fun, albeit initially not on these Solara R18s, and so that's going to mean that the next season we're not going to be worrying about the rain. However, I don't think that's a problem because, let's be honest, Ewan, we're all building up to the return of the iRacing Indy 500 anyway, and the teams probably have plenty of time to dial into the setups for that qualifying grind and the week that is yet to come.
No, exactly. I do wonder for those cars that can run ovals like the IndyCar, of course, whether rain will be included during those. I'm guessing not, but there we are. We can dream slightly about that. So yeah, that's going to be the big focus, isn't it? Really for the next season, which will, of course, encompass that race. And so we're doing a lot of racing around there, and not really worrying about rain. And anyway, I mean, there's not that many wet races in an IndyCar season anyway, so it's not going to feel unrealistic that we won't have rain in the next season, but I'm sure it'll be there in the future.
Yeah, we had that torrential rain, with Indy GP, not last year, but the year before, wasn't it? So, you know, we've had our issues with this aero screen, with the rain. One thing I don't think we're going to have an issue for, though, is drama at the end, because now Adam Blocker is right back onto the case of Phil Kraus. One thing that these cars in the past have been notorious for is when that rain light gets slightly pushed in, bad things can happen. Now, Blocker did run into the back end of Phil Kraus. Not sure how hard the contact was, not sure how much of a push there really was, but potentially. Could there be more damage to that private label Team Hype car that leads the race?
I mean, maybe. It's a 22.9 on that last lap, which was a bit slow, considering it's only lap 10 of the stint. I can't remember how long, it took him about 12 laps, I think, in the first part of the race to get into the 23s, and he's almost there already. So maybe it is slightly affecting him at the moment, and they're both maybe damaged, a little bit imperfect, because Kevin Burrell is catching them. Admittedly, he's got younger tyres on, but those that haven't got younger tyres on aren't really catching. So then again, maybe the track's just getting slower. It could be a number of reasons at this stage in the race, but it's still close between these front two. I'm just slightly concerned about the way that Adam Blocker is burning through push-to-passes, and maybe Kraus is going to start to have that real advantage and start using it pretty soon.
They are basically locked in terms of numbers, so if they both flash on the left side at the same time, then basically status quo will remain. Two options maybe to consider here. One, how much downforce did Adam Blocker put on that car, and maybe is losing half of the wing, not actually costing him that much downforce. B, something else to consider, you know, maybe Kraus is also now at the point where he didn't feel so much pain in the first stint with the red alternate tire. Maybe this stint he's feeling it a little bit more. Conditions only seemingly rising as we get to the peak temperature point of the day here on iRacing, right around 1:30 p.m. Maybe the alternate's not holding up as well as I've got to say, considering there definitely is no way that front wing is on Adam Blocker's car on his end. There is no way he should be keeping up, let's be real.
Yeah, absolutely. There is no way that that would happen on a normal day, but you've got to remember the factors that are going in his favour. Oh, goodness me. As they go out of turn 9. You've got to remember that he's on 4-lap younger tyres, and maybe this is a sort of masterstroke that he put on earlier on in the race. Got to remember that here is that moment for Phil Kraus. Big slide, and nearly tags it with the rear, nearly tags it with the front, just about keeps it out of turn 9. This is what I was mentioning earlier about the walls. We're getting close to it now that we're getting to the run for the flag now.
I mean, have they not built up their confidence enough to be able to run up to the wall at this point? What we're talking 40-odd laps into this race. Will come to the end of lap 46 to go this time by. Push to passes, 6 apiece. So they've got 1 usage a lap. You assume they're going to use it on that long back straightaway. Surprise. Could that be the element, though, that brings Blocker into the picture? Out of turn 1 they wind, onto the right foot they go, just with traffic up the road to consider. There's not much traffic, though, by any means.
Not too much. It's not terrible, but it could be race defining if it's caught in the wrong way and if it doesn't cooperate. I think we are going to see cooperation, though, from those cars going a lap down and those leaders who are about to pass them for the first time. And so it shouldn't be a major problem. As long as these two get through together cleanly without having to change their line or anything, then they should be okay. As Kraus takes another big bit of curve through turn 8 all over again. It feels like a chicane where he's been having 1 or 2 slight problems, if ever there's a weak area on this circuit for him.
Yeah, he's definitely hustling the car. There's no free passes being given, that is for sure. Replay as Will Weiser runs off the track, and that allows Brian Carey to swoop on through and climb forward up into 9th position. We're on to the back, though, of the traffic in this fight for the race lead. Both illuminated like on the left-hand side of your screen, the green indicating 70 horsepower, pushing them into that final corner, avoiding the curbs on either side of that final corner, perfectly placing the car on the run through the wall of champions. Lap traffic left-hand side, gets out of the way. 5 laps to go this time by.
And so this race is really coming down to it now. Very close out of turn 2 again, as Adam Blocker almost repeats the mistake that saw him lose part of his front wing, and Kraus seemingly losing a bit of his speed as well, although they're both struggling at this stage. Kraus getting slightly wrong there through 3 and 4 as well. Everybody really struggling at this stage in the race.
And multiple fights to keep an eye on. Jack Mara having to defend. Look at Andrew Marquez on the push to pass and the long way around through that final chicane. Has to back out of it. Allows the likes of Seb Alexander, Sam Carasala to close that margin too. Remember, they've got 5 laps to go at the line. Still with the focus placed on the leaders. Remember, drivers through the field still with their own little championship fight to keep their eyes on. Andrew Marquez on the primary tyres, everyone else in that fight on alternate. I wonder if he's got a little bit more grip than those around him. Blocker with more grip through the hairpin one more time.
Can he get the exit that he really needs here, Adam Blocker? He's right in the slipstream now. Phil Krause, who's on the push to pass once again, and they're cancelling each other out. This is the problem for Blocker right from the start. I mentioned it earlier on. He's giving up track position here, and there's not much gain for him. He's 4 laps younger on the red stripe tyres, and maybe that will pay dividends later on, but he's given up the most important thing around here, and that's track position. And if I was him, I really wouldn't have done that, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll have to ask the questions, the hard questions, in the post-race coverage here on RaceSpotTV, so don't go anywhere at the checkered flag. At the very least, we hope to try and get catch-ups with each of our podium sitters, especially going into the final championship round. Blocker and Birrell, it's going to be blockbuster at Pocono between the two of them, knowing what is on the line. The stakes, of course, will be turned up to the maximum, expecting a mega SOF 7 days from tonight. Back towards the back straightaway we go, where we've seen so many times the push to pass is being used. Seb Alexander just throwing a move on Andrew Marquez. I think that came out of nowhere.
It might well have done. Sam Carasala is looking for a way through, and Andrew Marquez here as well, and can't find it on the way down towards turn 1. But this is a fantastic group fighting for 5th position at the moment. You just wonder whether Marquez is starting to increase in speed a little bit now relative to those around him.
So here's a look at your leaders, still with the push to pass illuminated. Let's take a look at the replay though. What happened, because there was side by side between these two, and Alexander, even though sideways, bouncing on the curbs and pitching the car through the corner, gets his way on forward. Bold, brave and beautiful, and that fight still continues. Leaders come around though, back towards the line, 3 laps to go.
Yeah, it's still close between these two, but still no way through for Blocker, and he's still not even had the chance to go through yet either. Such a difficult one for him to get off these corners in the right way. I think he's finding it especially difficult out of turn 10 actually, and he's trying to find his way through on Phil Krause just up in front. He can't quite turn and accelerate as well as he used to, it looks like, with the damage, and he's finding it very tricky to get the run that he really needs off of these slow speed corners compared to Krause.
The new fastest lap, but down at the tail end of the field, Zach Kubler didn't get to take the race start despite qualifying up in, what was it, 5th position. He's gone out there on fresh tyres in the closing stages for a bit of a glory run and got a full half a second or so quicker than Krause's fastest lap at the very start of this race. Yes, push to pass assisted though. 2 laps to go at the line. Blocker shows himself in the mirrors, and then Krause goes deep in response. It's going to be a tidy exit for the two drivers as we work onto the button once more. 3/10 the margin, growing to 4/10 as they run down this long back straightaway. Blocker may actually have lifted off the throttle. His push to pass is deactivated.
I don't think he ever got on it, did he? I don't think he ever got on the push to pass, and this is the problem with him.
He's
using them earlier on.
He's still equal with Krause though, so they've been using them at the same time.
I thought he had 1 less earlier on, and he needed to sort of make 1 up again, and now they're on 2 each. I thought Blocker was on 1 less.
With 6
actually,
to
maybe
go,
I got that wrong.
6 to go, they were equaled out. So unless I missed something the last lap or so, boy, I think Blocker's just made a huge mistake.
But how? He was on a straight. Why would he lift off? I don't understand.
Might have got onto the power and the button just a bit too early and got the rear end loose. And as soon as you deactivate the throttle enough, that threshold kicks in and you're off the button. Back over, by the way, in the fight for 5th. Alexander's dropped back in very peculiar circumstances, but Mara holds off Marquez and Carasala. We might still have some fighting with 2 laps to go for these drivers.
Yeah, still probably more chance of overtakes back here, really, realistically, in the fight for the final spot inside the top 5. Could see some good passes here. Jack Mara out of push to passes, which means that Andrew Marquez, Sam Carasala are going to be on their tail, and there's the sliding again from Blocker. This time gets on the push to pass a little bit later maybe, but he's getting only further and further away.
Yeah, I don't... one call in the pit stop, even before the damage, let's not forget, has changed the complexion of this race. Let's go on board with Blocker. I just want to take a look. So it's hard to tell from this perspective, but as they get onto the power, yeah, you could see that. It was green spotted for a second and then back to off, and it's just small margins at the end of the day. But as we take the white flag, one more lap to go, has Phil Kraus, by the mother of all miracles, been able to hold them all off with one more lap to go?
Well, he's got the older tyres on, and he's been leading from the front, but most importantly, he got the track position. Even if Adam Blocker had pitted one lap earlier, none of this would have happened. He would have been out in front on newer tyres, and he would have been the one having to defend in such an advantageous position for him. But he's thrown it all away, to be honest with you. I don't know why he didn't come in earlier. I know he wanted the fresher tyres, I suppose, towards the end of this one, but it's not like Kraus has done an ultra-long stint to end this race. It's only 17 laps he's done on these red stripe tyres that has really sort of ended this race, and Adam Blocker has been forced into a mistake, forced to clipping the back of Phil Kraus, forced into getting damage, and it's meant that he will not be the race winner here this evening.
And so they both get onto the button, they both run their way down the back straightaway, but as you watch bottom of your screen, still 3 cars in the fight for 5th position with half a lap to go. What a tumultuous race here on the streets of Montreal. We always know street circuits are bound to be thrilling races, but maybe not to this extent. Phil Kraus, trials and tribulations, but victory here on a Monday night by the merest of margins. Half a second back to Adam Blocker, and what a race it was. Sam Carasala on the outside now of Andrew Marquez. Swap around for 6th position as we head off to the hairpin for one final time.
Yeah, we'll see if there's... Oh, nearly on the grass. Oh, lock up as well. Sam Carasala will be on the inside and be finding his way through. Surely that wide line from Andrew Marquez means that he won't be able to get back past again into the final chicane.
Lots of push to passes being used on these final laps. If you have any left at the end of the race, A means you might have been saving some fuel. B, you might not have been pushing hard enough. The drag race to the line, though, going to see drivers come up just short. Mara holds on to 5th position. Carasala by the merest of margins, a quarter of a second back to Marquez. And then Alexander Carey, and we'll wait for the final drivers to come towards the line. Ewan, as we get these drivers finishing up this race, some closing thoughts from this final street circuit, final road course of the season.
Yeah, once again, street course, road course, whatever you want to call it, has provided fantastic racing, and has done on the last 2 occasions we've had it in the IndyCar Open Series here. Fantastic racing between Phil Kraus and Adam Blocker, but unfortunately for Adam, he threw that race away, I've got to say, and maybe he'll have a couple of regrets at the end of that one, but that's not to take anything away from Phil Kraus, who drove beautifully as well.
He did indeed, and we're not going to get to see some victory donuts, so we'll make our way on over to grab a look at the race results. Margin of victory ends up being 7 odd tenths of a second once the timing settled and equalized on out. But it's private label Team Hype in front of Powerslide Motorsports. More drama between the two teams. I can only imagine what the conversation will be post-race. Then Kevin Burrell, second in the championship and making sure he stays as close to his championship rival Adam Blocker as possible. Rashad Craig stays out of trouble, 3 positions gained, and makes a long early stint work to get up to 4th position. Jack Mara 5th, Sam Carasala 6th, and then Andrew Marquez, Seb Alexander, and Brian Carey down to 9th. He qualified up in 2nd, and Canada's own will be slightly frustrated with how the finish went. Will Weisel was down in 10th position as he worked your way through the rest of the drivers. Jesper Orman 11th, Juha Reiner 12th after spinning on the opening lap, and then Nicholas Sudik, final car scored on your leading lap. Matt Shimiko, 14th for him. Christian Hildegard, 15th. Will be slightly disappointed, you think, in the satellite racing car. Victor Aoud, Olivier Hayward, and then you get to the driver that didn't even get to start the race, Zachary Hubler, who did, of course, punch in fastest lap in the closing stages. Maxime Cosson ran out of fuel and unfortunately did not get to finish off the race either in what was, let's be honest, a very, very dramatic affair. We have waved goodbye to Ewan O'Leary. He has jumped ship over to our coverage of the Precision Racing League that will begin in just a few moments' time. But you can stick here for the post-race coverage, the post-race reactions. We won't dawdle around any longer. We'll bring in Adam Blocker. Adam, seemed like a fun fight out there, but we've got to ask the most important question. Do you think you made an error in staying out there a little bit too long and letting Phil Kraus gain the track position in the final stint of the race?
No, I don't think I made an error on that at all. like, I think my error was pretty simple. I drove into the back of Phil on the outlap and broke my front wing. So the fact that I finished within a second of him with a broken front wing, like, tells you all you need to know. Like, I almost had a couple chances to pass, like, and I had to crank the front bar from P6 all the way down to P1, and I moved the brake bias like 2% rearward. So, like, the car was definitely broken, but.
Well, it was an interesting race, plenty of chaos. When you saw Phil breaking away in the early stages, was there ever a moment of worry that, oh, that gap's getting a little bit too large, a bit too much for me to bring back down on in?
Oh yeah, it was very concerning. I mean, these races with the where you have to run both compounds and where one compound is a lot stronger are sometimes really hard mentally. I mean, you know, in this first stint, I mean, Phil literally got a 10-second gap on me, probably 6-7 seconds within the first like 5 laps, and that's so hard, like, because you're not sure, like, am I just slower? Is the setup worse, or like, is it just a tire thing, or what? So then in the second stint, when I was able to get to him and, well, I basically passed him, but he pitted at the same time, I knew I was going to have a good chance because, I mean, he pitted so much earlier, and then, you know, I basically, he didn't really give me a chance to undercut him, so once he pitted, I just decided to stay out and, yeah, get the tire advantage, which I think was the right call if I just had been a little more patient in the outlap.
I mean, you said it. It was a small mistake, a costly mistake, but next week we go to Pocono to wrap up the championship, of course. You should still have the points advantage over Kevin Burrell going into that round, but what should we expect in our return to the Tricky Triangle?
I mean, honestly, Pocono's races kind of like it always has. The races pretty well. Like, you can, a lot of it depends on the weather that we get, but if it's cooler, there'll be a lot of passing throughout the field, and even if it's a warm race, which it shouldn't be because of the date, but you can still pass. It's kind of a good mix of races, kind of like Indianapolis in a certain way, except that like turn 3, there's a lot of lines you can take. So to me, it's one of the most fun ovals that we race. So yeah, looking forward to it. I won't make the Monday, but I'll make the Saturday. So hopefully that's enough for the point situation.
I'll make things interesting, that's for sure. But Adam, congratulations on second. Best of luck next week in the championship showdown.
Yeah, I just want to thank Brian at Powerslide. Obviously, he probably deserved a P3 in this race, and yeah, I think we had the best setup. But yeah, just unfortunate. But yeah, see you guys next week.
Adam Blocker joins us from second. Phil Kraus has finally stopped celebrating, joined us for a quick chat. Phil, I mean, what a tumultuous race. 10 seconds clear, then you have to come in and for 5 seconds extra to change your front wing, then you get run over slightly and Adam Blocker breaks his front wing. I mean, how much more chaos did you want in that race?
Oh yeah, Arjun, sorry I missed my push to talk there, but yeah, it was really a race to see who wanted to win the least, for sure. But yeah, no, that first stint was definitely really strong for me. Managed to pull at him to 10 seconds, like you said, and I was able to hold him there, which I didn't think I'd be able to do, because usually on the last like 2-3 laps on the primaries, they gain like 3-4 tenths a lap, and it never really happened for him. And then on my outlap, was pretty unfortunate with Rashad, to be honest. Like, he was pretty far over to the left going through turn 5, and I think that made him brake a little bit earlier than he would have done, because I was braking pretty early too on cold primaries, but yeah, that was unfortunate, and that cost me a few seconds for sure. But yeah.
Well, let's talk about what we called on the broadcast as some of the best heads-up driving we've seen recently. The battle between you and Blocker that saw you then make the trip down to pit lane, where you realized that you were going to be able to squeeze him on the run into the final quarter and also make your way into pit lane and not run into Olivia Hayward. I mean, what was going through your mind there? Were you thinking about that decision, or was it a little bit instinctual?
I knew the moment he passed me, because I had that 5-second extra hold for the wing change. I knew I had to pit as soon as he passed me, no matter how big the tire disadvantage was going to be at the end, just to give myself a chance to hold him off. Because if I didn't do that, I was just going to merge, like, I don't know, 6 seconds behind him if we pit together, and then, you know, just try and catch, and that was never going to work. So, yeah, right when I saw him pull alongside and I saw he was going to clear me into the final chicane, it's like, all right, we're sending it into the pits, I guess.
It was one of those moments where we got very excited, got to shout a little bit, but we're looking forward to Pocono next week, Phil, because how much should we be looking forward to shouting there?
Oh yeah, Pocono's really fun in this car. It always is. Always enjoy Pocono. And Jason really enjoys Pocono, so we should have...
Is he going to race?
I hope so, Jason. I know you're listening. You're driving the car, yeah? But we should have a good package there, and it always puts on a good show, so I'm sure your vocal cords will be tired by the end of that race.
I mean, I like the sound of that, and I'll just also say, allegedly, Jason Brophy was so quick tonight that he didn't show up because he was scared that he was going to wax the field, so he better be here a week from tonight. Phil, congratulations on the win. Can't wait to see you over at Pocono to close the season off.
Yep, cheers, Arjuna.
Always great to be able to catch up with the drivers before we say goodbye here on RaceSpotTV. And boy, what a blockbuster. Final street circuit, final road course, however you want to throw the labels onto the race. But trips to the circuit Gilles Villeneuve never disappoint. As mentioned, tricky triangle up next. And boy, it's one of those challenges that you've really got to adapt to, both as an engineer setting up the car, dialing it in to be able to go fast, but also then as a driver. Dialing in the tools for 3 unique corners, all modeled on famous racetracks around the US. I mean, you look at that famous tunnel turn, fast sweeping through turn 2. Then turn 1, of course, with plenty of banking. I mean, it should be fun. Jacob Oster's just jumped into the chat to say it will be fun. Hopefully he joins us to race as well, because unfortunately we did not get to see any of your Team i5G machines today. That, of course, though, will lead us to close out the season, and what a season it has been. We have journeyed across of the world in what will be the final season, hopefully for a long time, that we don't get to add in the real-world IndyCar tracks into the mix. Yes, it's fun to go to the likes of the Nordschleife, to Zandvoort, and to everything else in between, Monza, Le Mans, and so much more, but the bread and butter of the series is matching up with the NTT IndyCar Series, and that is what we will get to do from next season moving on forward. Don't forget, this is an official iRacing series open to anyone to join, anyone to participate in. All you need to do is join iRacing, head to iRacing.com. New memberships 40% off. You can get in on the fun. Every day is race day. For now, though, it's time for us to say goodbye. For Ewan O'Leary alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thanks for joining us for a frenetic and frantic street circuit race. Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, the streets of Montreal never disappoint, and while IndyCar might be a rather unfamiliar guest, all things considered, it's not an unwelcome guest, that is for sure. We'll see you next time. For now, so long and goodbye for us here at RaceSpotTV.